Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something that is probably keeping a lot of you up at night, the 2026 basement cost iceberg. If you've been staring down your unfinished basement just dreaming about turning that bare concrete box into an amazing, livable extension of your home, well, you've probably also experienced some serious sticker shock lately. So today, we're moving right past those initial jaw drops. We are going to look at the hard data, the hidden systems you never see, and the smart investments that separate a complete disaster from a truly successful project.
All right, let's just rip the Band-Aid off right out of the gate. $82,500. That is the 2026 national median project cost for a basement finish, straight from Remodeling magazine data. I know, right? It sounds wildly high. Especially if you've been reading those suspiciously low clickbait articles promising you a brand new basement for the price of a used Honda Civic. But for a typical 700 square foot space in 2026, this is the absolute reality. And our goal right now is to show you exactly why that is and literally where every single dollar is going.
But to really get why that price tag is so stubborn, we've got to zoom out and look at the macro picture. Have you heard of the NAHB Remodeling Market Index? It's basically a thermometer for the industry, showing us just how tight labor and market conditions are nationwide. We're talking persistent shortages in skilled trades, way stricter 2024 building codes rolling out, and relentless bumps in material costs like engineered wood and copper wiring. It is a fiercely competitive market out there. Once you understand this index, it totally makes sense why you just aren't going to find deep discount bargains from any reputable contractor right now.
Look, there's this massive myth floating around that finishing a basement is basically just a cosmetic makeover. You throw up some paint, roll out some carpet, haul down a nice couch, and boom, you're done. But the reality? You are doing heavy, subterranean construction. You're dealing with serious moisture control, totally reworking HVAC systems, framing out walls, and digging egress windows. You are literally creating a conditioned, comfortable living space out of a cold, damp concrete shell.
I absolutely love this quote because it hits the nail right on the head. A basement finish is essentially building a small house within your house's foundation. You've got to budget for the critical, heavy infrastructure first, way before you even start thinking about the fun stuff like paint colors. You're building from scratch down there, managing airflow, running completely new electrical circuits, and trenching plumbing lines underground.
So let's break down where that money is actually going. This is fascinating because the vast majority of your budget goes behind the walls into things you'll literally never see. You've got 25% eaten up by unseen systems in HVAC, another 30% locked into framing and drywall, and only about 35% is left for the finishes and flooring that you actually interact with every day. Oh, and don't ignore that 10% recommended contingency. The National Association of Home Builders considers that totally non-negotiable for older homes. Because let's face it, once you open up basement walls, you have no idea what you're going to find.
Moving along to Section 1, the gotcha costs, unseen budget killers.
These are the things that'll absolutely wreck a poorly planned budget. I'm talking about mandatory code and safety requirements that catch people totally off guard. If your contractor isn't talking to you on day one about the code requirement for an egress window in a sleeping area, which, by the way, averages around $7,500, or the fact that your maxed out 100-amp electrical panel needs a $3,000 upgrade, you are in serious trouble. Add in a proper radon and moisture mitigation system, and you're staring down massive change orders later. You simply have to account for these on day one.
Okay, quick funny story for you. While we were pulling data for this explainer, we were looking into some of those wildly inaccurate, lowball online cost calculators. And funny enough, if you try to scrape data from those sites, you might just trigger a literal Cloudflare security block for suspicious activity. I guess even the internet's security systems know that bad data is a threat. So let's skip the clickbait and stick to the real, vetted numbers, all right?
That brings us to Section 2, passing the 10-year test.
Because let's be real, this explainer isn't just about getting the job done today. It's about making sure your basement survives a decade in a high-abuse, high-moisture underground environment. There are 4 non-negotiable steps to future-proof the space. Step 1. 20 mil stone polymer composite luxury vinyl plank flooring. Solid hardwood or cheap laminate will literally fail underground. Step 2. Paperless, mold-resistant drywall against foundation walls is an absolute must. Step 3. Ditch the standard latex and go with a commercial acrylic paint, something like Scuff X that can actually handle the abuse. And Step 4. 90+ CRI LED lighting. Sure, these upgrades might add 5 to 8% up front, but they absolutely save you from having to gut the place in 3 years.
And here is the silver lining to all of this. Doing it right really matters financially. Yes, the upfront costs are undeniably high, but the 2026 data shows an incredibly strong return on investment. At resale, you're generally looking at recouping 65 to 75% of the project's cost. A beautifully finished, bone-dry, well-lit basement gives you massive usable square footage without the agonizing pain and, frankly, astronomical cost of building a brand-new home addition. It's a huge selling point down the road.
Let's put this into practice with Section 3, 3 representative projects in 2026.
To make these numbers super concrete, let's look at 3 actual project scopes and notice the dramatic jumps here. A basic 600 square foot rec room with no complex plumbing, that's sitting around $55,000. But look at the mid-range suite at $92,000. See how adding an egress window and complex plumbing, like say an ejector pump for a full bathroom, just dramatically bumps up your total investment? And then you hit the high-end zone at $165,000 plus. That's your custom home theaters, steam showers, high-end millwork. Ultimately, it's the complexity of the infrastructure that drives these price tiers.
Now, what about the timeline? A realistic, proper finish is going to take anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks. Take a really close look at weeks 2 through 5. Pulling proper permits and passing municipal inspections for your framing, your electrical, and your plumbing rough-ins, that completely dictates the pace of the entire project. If a guy tells you he can knock your basement out in 4 weeks, actually scratch that. If anyone promises under a month, they are almost certainly skipping permits. Huge red flag.
Which perfectly segues into Section 4, Empowered Hiring, Vetting a True Professional.
All right, you know the costs, you know the timeline. Now it's time for the rapid-fire interview questions you absolutely have to ask any potential contractor. Question number 1. How will you keep the space dry permanently? This is arguably the most important question you can ask. Water is the absolute nemesis of any basement, and if they get this wrong, literally nothing else matters.
And listen closely to their answer. A true professional won't just brush it off and say they'll slap a coat of waterproof sealant on the interior walls. No way. You want a highly technical answer like this one. You want to hear them prioritize a permanent air gap and a capillary break, maybe using a dimple mat membrane. You want to know they actually understand the hard science of how moisture moves through concrete. Next up, question number 2. What is your detailed lighting plan? Since basements naturally lack sunlight, asking this ensures you aren't going to end up spending 80 grand on a dark, depressing bunker. Lighting should never, ever be an afterthought.
You're listening for a very specific strategy here. They should be pitching a layered approach. We're talking high-quality 3000K recessed LEDs for a really warm, natural feel. They should suggest spacing them a bit closer than you would upstairs, maybe 4 to 5 feet apart. And every single fixture needs to be on a dimmer. Dimmers give you absolute control over the mood, and they're a total game changer underground.
And finally, question number 3. How do you handle unforeseen conditions and change orders? Because let's face it, subterranean surprises, like finding a cracked foundation or a hidden pipe leak, they're practically inevitable. You need to know exactly how financial shocks are going to be handled before you sign your name on anything.
The gold standard answer sounds exactly like this. They should guarantee that if they find an issue, work stops immediately. They document it with photos, present you with a fixed price change order, and absolutely no work proceeds without your approval. You maintain total control over that contingency budget we talked about. No nasty surprises on the final invoice.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Getting the envelope right, the boring stuff, ensures your beautiful, expensive finishes will actually last. So when you start planning your project, where are you going to invest your budget first? Will you obsess over the unglamorous science of water and structure? Or are you going to risk it all for a fancy wet bar? Make the smart choice. Focus on the foundation first, and your new space is going to reward you for decades to come. Catch you next time.